because I really love dabbling in that, because it balances me out. So I will do that again. I'm going to keep with sports for a little while, and I'm going to see where the unacceptables goes. And then from there, pretty much the next year of my writing is booked. And which is very odd to me. I didn't think that would ever happen, but I literally have planned it out almost a year in advance. That doesn't mean that I won't eventually be like, oh my gosh, how amazing would it be to have this like hot stud cowboy and like write about it. I don't know. I've always wanted to write fantasy, but I want to write like YA fantasy, which is so different than what I'm used to doing. That would be very far in the future.
Fade to black.
Yeah, I don't know how to fade to black.
You know, if you write sexy surgeon, your grandmother and I can help you.
That's something that I haven't wrote either. I have not done that. That might be strange, calling my grandmother so... Actually, my grandmother would be perfectly okay with talking to me about that. She would be 100% all right. She actually buys all of my books and leaves my books in the locker, in the lounge at the hospital that she works at, and she lets anyone borrow them that wants. And she's just like, you just got to put a review on Amazon. Because I told her that that's what she had to do. So you can lend my books out. That's fine with me. They have to leave a review. And so that's yeah.
Any more of the hysterics having a book?
Okay, so I've been writing Becoming Hysteric for about 2 years. Trisha is going to kill me. Laser beams right here, I know. It's really hard for me to write the backstory for them because I destroyed my characters so much. I gave them the hardest lives growing up. Their moms are terrible. Their dads are alcoholics. No one cares about these like high school kids, and they care so much about each other. And so they're just like phenomenal. And if anyone's read The Hysterics, they all know how sad the ending of Becoming Hysteric would have to be. And I don't know how to write it. And I have been staring at about 6,000 words written of this book for years, and I don't know how to give them the voice and do them justice. I don't know how to do it, and I need to, and I'm sorry for everyone that is waiting for it. I have the cover, I have the blurb, I have everything ready for it. Literally, I just have to write it. My editor also is asking me for it. It's not just you guys. She's like, I feel incomplete. Give me, yeah.
So, you're saying you're sticking with sports romances. Are you thinking about changing from hockey to like a different sport?
I already wrote my first sports romance was Rough and Tumble, which was football. I will be writing another football romance. It will be releasing in September. I can't talk anymore about it.
When you're sitting there writing your books, when the Super Bowl was going on,
Yes.
did your thought process take you away from the fact that the Falcons was winning?
Or the fact that the Patriots are cheaters?
Yes. So this wasn't the last Super Bowl, it was a year before. And I literally was not paying attention. I didn't care.
No one cared about us.
No one cared. I was perfectly fine with there's pictures of me sitting on the floor with my computer open and people yelling at me. Rochelle Page's son is one of those, Mitchell. He was yelling at me. How many words you got? How many words have you written today, Kristen? I don't see you typing. Like, Mitchell! He's like, what, I wrote a book? He did. He did. He did do that. He was 19 at the time and I wanted to kill him. But yeah, that was fun. It was a fun day. What's up?
I was just wondering, I thought people might like to know, do you think that reading Jane Austen novels at 8 years old had anything to do with you becoming an author?
Listen to my mom. I have no idea. When I was younger, I had severe dyslexia to the point where it was crippling. I remember the day that I read by myself for the first time ever. I was in 5th grade. My mom was sitting on the couch with me. She had to homeschool me because of my struggles. And I can't believe that I'm here. But I'll never forget that because it means so much more to me. And I pay my editor a lot of money because there are typos that I'll never get. There are things that I'll never see. There's tensing that I'll never understand. And I have come so far since then. And I was, 9-10 years old when I first read by myself. And it was my mom would read a paragraph, and then I would read it back to her. And I one day read past where she read, and I didn't realize that I had kept reading. And she stopped me, and she was crying. And I'll never forget it because it was that moment changed my life. And it was because my mom cared enough to take me out of school when a principal literally was so mean to me that she ripped me out of an honor roll assembly when I had finally started to understand how to learn my way. She was like, "You don't deserve to be here," took me off of the stage in front of my parents and the entire school, and my mom stood up for me. And if my mom hadn't been there that one day, my life could have been completely different. That one moment was a defining moment in my life. Yeah.
Yay for moms! Woo!
Yeah. So, any other questions? We can totally move past that.
Moving
On
on.
the subject of things that are awesome, what is a Dana and where can one acquire one?
Wait, a Dana?
Yeah.
Dana is my ride or die. She's my best friend. She was my random roommate in college. Thank God UCF put us together. I don't know what I would do without her. No one can have her. She is mine. She is not out for loan, for purchase.
I mean, that is, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Well, let's see how much they're offering first.
Yeah,
We run by the hour and we'll split it 50-50 maybe.
I only need like 15 minutes.
Wait, what are we talking about?
that just,
Yours might have taken a really dark turn. Just remember your wife is to your right.
Now we're getting into pimping. We crossed the line.
It's so funny. Any other questions? How are we doing in the live feed?
Are there any questions?
No questions in the live feed.
You should totally read.
I mean, there was a yay Dana in the live feed.
Don't forget about that one.
Okay. So I'm going to read the first 2 chapters of Low Blow, which is my newest release. They're short, so don't worry. I do switch from characters' point of view, so I'll tell you when it switches. I'm going to take my bracelets off right here. I'm not going to put them on the spot like that. Also, I have never read in front of a group of people like this since I was, live videos are way different. I'm hiding behind my computer.
I hate live videos, just for the record. I don't know what it is, I get instantly shy.
You're like the least shy person ever.
I don't know what it is, I know, but it's something live. I don't know, I feel like
I get instantly shy too. I swear.
That's not a thing. Jessica Ham does not get shy ever.
No, she does not.
Okay. So, it's okay.
No pressure.
Also, there is a typo, because I see that you have the book open, so I'm going to tell you. Chapter 1, and I've fixed this since this printing, so I'm weird that you guys have gotten these copies of them. That means that Amazon had them stockpiled. But chapter 1 is Griffin's point of view, not Carla's. So, I mean, you can get that within the first line, that it's not her. But anyway, so it's Griffin's point of view is where I'm starting. Okay. The gymnasium was jam-packed with tons of kids from my school, our rivals, and as many parents of athletes as possible. Growing up in New York, there were 3 sports that were a way of life: wrestling, boxing, or hockey. When I was little, my dad tried to get me into hockey, but I absolutely hated it and was a klutz on the ice. So I bit the bullet and traded in my skates and stick for a speed bag in the garage and a pair of boxing gloves. Best decision I had ever made. My older brother was already a rookie for the New York Otters, the team my old man coached. So hockey was theirs. Boxing was all mine. Before I knew it, my match was about to start. I waved to my mom as I began to stretch. She was giddily clapping and waving from the bleachers, yelling, "Yay, Griffin!" Martha Hayes was a woman of good breeding and class, always proper, just the nines, kind, but snobby. She was as supportive as she could be, and really tried to act like she cared about boxing or hockey. Despite her best efforts, we all knew she wished we played golf and went sailing on the weekends. Instead, she dealt with bloody noses, scraped knees, and smelly workout gear. Her life probably would have been so much better and simpler if she'd had daughters instead of sons. But we all have to play the hands we're dealt. "Are you ready, son?" Coach Redding grunted as he clapped me on the back. "This is going to be your year, Griff. That state championship is only a few fights away." I was his golden goose, and he was milking me for all he could. He had his heart set on riding out my talents all the way to winning the first title of his coaching career. Yes, I was the one fighting for it, and yes, my name was going to be on that trophy. But the way Coach acted, you'd have thought that it was his victory, not mine. As ready as I'll ever be, I threw my mouth guard in and slithered through the ropes. Tapping gloves with my opponent, Vic Lonergan, I felt more intimidated in the ring than I ever had before. I was the youngest guy on the varsity team, and even though I was small and stealthy, most of the guys I was matched up against had reach on me for miles. They all liked to be outside fighters, and I needed to bring them in and do some real damage. Vic was at the top end of our weight class, and I was considered a bantamweight. I wasn't completely sure it was a fair fight, but that didn't matter. The match was already starting. The bout was going to take everything I had. Vic's cheeks were up, and he was dancing around me like a damn ballerina as I waited. I wasn't about to waste energy on chasing him, and he was doing a great job of tiring himself out unnecessarily. One quick jab to my chest, and I got him hard with a cross in the ribs. I could hear my coach hollering from the side to keep him close. I went in for a 1-2, missing completely, and as his glove got me right in the breadbasket, and then with another hit that made me see stars. The wind was knocked out of me. Damn kidney shot. I staggered back, trying to catch my breath as he came at me again. His glove crashed directly into my left rib cage. I heard the bone snap instantly as I cried out. The referee flew to me, holding me up. Everything started to fade as Coach leaped to my aid. Griffin, are you all right?" I tried to respond, but nothing came out. I was dazed, falling faster and faster into nothing. Utter, complete darkness. It blanketed me as pain took over every cell in my body. "It's only a few busted ribs." I tried to comfort my mom as she sat at my bedside crying. "Is he going to be out for the rest of the season?" She wiped the tears from her cheeks as she looked over at my doctor. He shut off the x-ray light, turning to face her. "I am afraid he is going to have to sit the rest of the matches out, yes. But he should be right as rain come the start of next year's season. See, everything's going to be fine. I will be able to fight again next year." I was more saying it to comfort myself than anything else. Being so seriously injured was a hard pill to swallow, but there was nothing I could do about it. My mother's sobs started to get louder as she whimpered. "I don't know what we're going to tell your father." Her hands flew in the air as the dramatics took over. "Why don't you tell him the truth?" How many times did he get injured during his hockey career? I think if anyone is going to understand, it'll be Pop. I hated how concerned my mom was about what my father was going to think. Who gives a... if he's mad. I was actually hurt for crying out loud. Isn't that all that actually mattered? Not if my old man was going to be frustrated by the crappy situation. Taking a tissue from the doctor, my mom blew her nose and then looked up at him. Will he be able to work out and keep up his strength? My mom was dead set on finding a silver lining to bring home with her to comfort her husband once he started raging out about his son being laid up for a season. Absolutely ridiculous. After the bones are healed, Griff will be able to start with physical therapy and then be back in the gym, hitting the heavy bag before you know it. Luckily, teens are resilient. Your boy will have nothing to worry about. Thank you, Rudy. Mom faked a smile. If you'd like to call Mr. Hayes and have him come down, I would be more than happy to explain this to him, if that would make you more comfortable. Dr. Rudy Duncan had been our family's doctor for as long as I could remember. And with the amount of money my mom's family had dumped into the hospital over the years, we got all kinds of special treatment. Case in point, Dr. Duncan was in a polo and golf pants because we had his personal pager number and my mother had insisted on calling him on his Saturday off. He's away for work right now. It wasn't like Dr. Duncan didn't know who my family was, but I didn't want this special treatment because my father and brother were famous hockey players, or because my mom's side of the family was dripping with more money than they knew what to do with. I was in pain and wanted to get home and onto the couch. All right, the front desk has your discharge paperwork and aftercare instructions. Be sure to take it easy and let those ribs heal up before you start back at the gym. I hopped off the table and cringed from the pain of that simple motion. Don't worry, Doc. I ain't trying to mess up my recovery. That's good to hear, son. I'll see you back here in a couple of weeks to check out your progress. Okay, that was chapter 1. I'm going to move on to chapter 2. Everyone good? Any questions? Okay. That's what I do in my videos, at least. I don't know how else to do this. Okay, we're still in Griffin's point of view, and we're jumping a few months. What do you mean he has to have a heart transplant? He had a few broken ribs. That's it. They were supposed to heal on their own and then be done with. The look of terror on my mother's face while she shook in her seat as we were talking to Dr. Duncan and his young colleagues was a sight I would not soon forget. She looked so defeated, hiding under her lavender poncho. My father stood like a statue behind her. He had mastered the art of being stoic years ago. Frankly, he was an ass. But it was what it was. There sure as was no changing that man. I curse a lot, guys, I'm sorry. As Rudy explained to you over the phone, the infection has spread to his heart, and unfortunately, there is little else we can do. The young doctor hung her head as she put a kind hand on my shoulder. You're young, and for the most part, healthy. We will find a donor. I'm sure of it. Just have faith. You will get better. I knew she had no clue if she was going to be able to help me, or if a donor organ would become available in time. Also, the icing on the cake sank in hard. For me to live, someone would have to die. How is that fair? In the wake of someone's tragedy, I would find restoration. That just didn't seem right to me at all. How could it? How long are people usually on the waiting list? My father's gruff voice bellowed through the small room. Before Dr. Duncan could answer, my brother burst into the room, completely out of breath. I got here as fast as I could. Griffin's face was red as he stood huffing and puffing in the doorway. He was dressed in sweats and stank to high heaven. It irked me that he was pulled out of practice because of me. I hated feeling like a burden. Mom, I told you not to call him, I growled. Our mother shrugged as Griffin took a seat next to me. How could you expect her not to? We're family, little bro. The concern blanketing my entire family started to choke me. One injury, a few broken ribs, had turned into an infection, which had turned into me needing a freaking heart transplant from a dead guy at 16 years old. This was completely unbelievable. My cold sweats were irritating, and my mom blubbering was making me uncomfortable. Now I had my father's look of disappointment and my brother's unwavering support filling the rest of my tiny hospital room. It was more than I could handle. Don't you have practice to get back to? I glared at my father. It wasn't like I was a priority in his life. His team came first. It had since he was a player, and did even more so that he was the coach. Griffin shifted, looking over at me. They can handle practice without us. My father grunted, and I wanted to scream. After taking a slow breath, I muttered, "Thanks." It was all I could think to say. I wanted to be alone, but they needed to be with me, more to ease their own minds than to comfort me. Okay, we're switching to Olive's point of view, which is the main female in the book, and it's a few weeks later. I might cry during part of this, so I apologize. I'm sorry. My world stopped. I couldn't breathe. How could this be happening? I stood in the foyer of my home, staring blankly at a police officer that was explaining an accident to my stepmother. He was talking about how an incident with a forklift at my father's job site had him in critical care at Flushing Hospital. I could hear them. I could understand the words they were what the words they were saying meant, but I did not know how it could be real. There was no way my father was as badly injured as the officer was explaining. He was supposed to be taking me to work on my car at his garage in a few hours. How could he miss that? He never missed spending time with me. He would never be late. Hillary, my stepmom, started talking to me, having to repeat herself a few times before her words actually registered in my brain. "Olive, grab your coat, honey. Liv, we need to go to the hospital." I shook my head frantically, trying to clear the jumbled mess as best as I could. I felt tears rolling down my cheeks and neck, and my voice was weak when I responded. "Okay, be right down." I bolted up the stairs on shaking knees, trying to keep reality at bay. My father was fine. He had to be. There was nothing else that could make sense of this in this world. Walking into my dad's room, where machines were breathing for him and keeping his heart beating, felt like an out-of-body experience. I could have sworn it was a terrible dream I was going to wake up from as soon as my alarm clock sounded and saved me. But the blaring noise that soon broke through my consciousness was not the clock radio on my nightstand in my bedroom. It was an alarm sounding the end of my father's life. Nurses and doctors rushed in, a slow-motion blur as my stepmother screamed and I dropped to my knees. "You need to let the doctors do their jobs. Please step outside." A nurse was wrapping her arms around me, trying to get me to my feet, but it was futile. I wailed on the floor as they put paddles on my father's chest. Reluctantly, Hillary and I finally were forced into the cold plastic chairs in the hallway right outside my father's room. One of the doctors came out, melancholy drenched his features as he spoke to us. I was in a daze, barely able to wrap my head around what he was saying. Shocking, my dad worked. They got a faint heartbeat, but it was obvious things weren't going to be good. He was brain dead. At least that's what he explained to us. "I'm so sorry." The doctor's head dropped, and I clung to Hillary as we both wept. "There's nothing that can be done?" she asked desperately, her voice cracking through sobs. Unfortunately, his body is slowly shutting down, and there is no brain activity. The words were harsh and cold. My father was a great man, kind, caring, hardworking. And now he had been reduced to a corpse that was being medically kept alive for his organs to be harvested. "Can we say goodbye?" I didn't know what else to do. I wanted to at least have a moment with him. The doctor nodded and Hillary looked at me. How about I go in first and then you can take as long as you need. With a tight hug, she left me in the corridor to watch as she cried at her husband's bedside. Hillary was a great stepmom, loved me more than she had to, and never treated me like I wasn't her own daughter. I had never been more grateful for her than I was in that moment. Once Hillary was finished, I took my seat next to my father's side. I'm going to grab a cup of coffee, my stepmother muttered as she exited the room. We were alone, just like we had been for the first 7 years of my life. I had always thought it would be my dad and me against the world forever. It's crazy how fast things change. Daddy, I sobbed as I spoke. I love you. I will always be your little girl. You're my hero, my rock, and now you'll be my angel. Thank you for always being such a wonderful father. And then I broke. I was uncontrollably crying and shuddering, holding on to his hand for dear life. I didn't want the moment to end. I didn't want to actually say goodbye. Hillary's faint voice came from the door. Liv, it's time. I stood, kissed my father's cheek, and said, this isn't goodbye. This is see you later. I love you, Daddy. I'm sorry. I wrote that scene when I was back home for my dad's birthday. I walked downstairs and I was hysterically crying like I am now. And I walked into the kitchen. My dad had just gotten home from the gym. And he was just talking to me like everything was normal, and I'm crying. He's like, are you okay? I was like, I just really wrote an emotional scene. I'm really sorry. And he just hugged me. He's like, it's okay. That's the scene that I wrote. Yeah, so I'm really glad that I was home for that, because at least I could hug my dad, because that was like really rough. So yeah, that's low glow. So obviously Griffin gets her dad's heart. That's the whole premise of the story. Any questions? Anything else? I'm sorry. Next book signing July 15th for the Love of Books in Florida in Sarasota.
And you're at Booker too, aren't you?
I'm at Booker the weekend after.
Birthday weekend!
Birthday
Woo-hoo!
My 29th birthday, I will be at Booker in Orlando. Yep. I turned 29 the Friday before, so July 21st.
What was your very first signing?
My very first signing was Indie Book Fest in 2014 in Orlando, Florida. I did not sell a single book. Oh. It's okay.
No,
it's only up from there. Like,
But we still talk to people we met at that signing.
It was the most humbling experience that I could have ever asked for my first event. I'm so glad, because my bar was set so low that I'm like really happy when anyone even comes to talk to me at signings. And Dana and I made connections with people that were completely invaluable. Very specifically, Anna Zayers and Dima Zales. We met that weekend. It was the first time that I had met. She was Janice Baker then, but she's now Josie Bordeaux. First time I had ever met her, we shared a table. You should check out her books, you'll like them. that face, I was like, I know you don't know who that is. Yeah, she's amazing. She's a phenomenal author. There were a lot of people that we met at that signing that was just very instrumental. Candy Steiner, but Candy is actually a sorority sister of mine. But it was the first time that she and I actually met in person. She joined my sorority a few years after I was out. But we're sorority sisters.
Mandy wants to know if you still fangirl over other authors.
All the time. Like,
All the time.
incredibly. Like, even having, like, people
Who's on your bucket list to an author to meet?
to me. I really want to meet Jamie McGuire, just because of how instrumental she has been, and I actually will next year. I'm doing one of her events, actually, in Providence, Rhode Island. So I'm really excited that I got on that
When
event.
is that?
I don't
Dana?
know.
This is one of my questions. So, like, if you're writing a book and you're stuck, you don't know how you're like, oh, I don't know where to take this story. Is there a place where you go to like in the shower or something?
Actually I take baths. So I just like all soak in a bathtub.
Instead of taking a bath.
I have like a very specific it's just like bath stuff that I get from like Target, and it just like that smell just like helps me relax, and then usually I can break through like my walls.
Do you believe in that study where if you chew that piece of gum or smell that scent, it comes back to you later?
I know that for a fact that that's true. I think it's just something that it's more like my calm, but it definitely could be like helping me, and I just don't even realize it. So I'm not sure.
My friend Donald wants to know if you want to hit the gym with us.
Not today. I have an after party, but I mean, maybe. Sure, why not? Any other questions? Are we like close to time? Like, should we start signing? Okay, so we should start signing. Start with Dana's. I hate when Dana sees me signing her books.
I won't look. I'm looking up the events to give information.
I will get you a copy. They're out of them here.
Oh.
Actually, Bree, can we order more? Or she just wants to buy a copy of Lobo, but we don't have any more. Okay, so Bree can help you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just we're out.
Okay. What do you have?
Just everything that's on the table.
Oh,
This is the first book in the series.
Okay, Providence, Rhode Island is October 6, 2018.
Oh, you found the Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Who's there? Can I see who's there? Maybe. Huh? Because my brother lives in Delaware, so I could like visit when I go there. I just don't want to. I have a plan on my trip, so I'm signing. I do. I just that's why I went to office in Bluegrass. Oh my gosh. It was awesome.